first visitors to Conyers were just passing through. About 10,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, small bands of nomads followed the seasons through the rivers and streams of what is now Rockdale County. The ancient game trail used by these earliest settlers passed through what is now Conyers. The Etowah Trail, later known as Hightower Trail, is the oldest and one of the most significant passages in the Southeast.
Towards the latter years, before that land was actually opened to settlers in 1816, there were two Indian nations that were living side by side in the northeastern section of Rockdale County, about 7 miles from the depot. And that was the Creek Indians on the southern side and the Cherokee Nation. And the dividing line was the old Hightower Trail.
As European settlers moved away from the coastal areas of the state, they found that the Hightower Trail was the easiest route into the new territory. In 1821, the Creek Nation officially ceded their lands to the newcomers, and the state of Georgia lured more settlers to the area with a land lottery. By 1839, the Cherokee had been forcefully removed from their land on the Trail of Tears. Then, modern technology changed the fabric of the land forever. The invention of rail travel changed how towns and cities developed overnight. Areas of Georgia once considered rugged wilderness became regular stops on the rail line.
Several of the early settlers that had gotten wind that the railroad was coming this way and were not happy about the land being taken over by the railroad. One man in particular was a man by the name of John Holcomb, who was the local blacksmith. Mr. Holcomb had a log cabin that was located on where our old courthouse stands today on North Main Street, across from Evans Pharmacy. And he owned most of the land down here to where the railroad tracks are. He was very much against the railroad coming through, so much so that people had seen him walking up and down the tracks, shouting to the workers that the first man that struck a pick in his land, he would kill.
Dr. William D. Conyers, a physician and banker in Covington, was on the railroad's board and an acquaintance of Mr. Holcomb's. Dr. Conyers went out to the proposed right-of-way and found Holcomb walking up and down the property making his threats. "Why don't you sell out and move away?" asked Dr. Conyers. "I would if I were you." "I will if I can get my price," replied the irate blacksmith. "And what would that be?" $700 was the reply. A deal was struck. Dr. Conyers paid Holcomb his $700, then deeded the land to the Georgia Railroad. Thanks to the vision of Dr. Conyers, the line to Marthasville, now Atlanta, was completed without incident. The railroad authorities named their new water stop Conyers Station, in honor of Dr. Conyers for solving the problem of the stubborn blacksmith.
The time that the railroad was completed in 1845, the 171 miles was considered the longest railroad in our country. And from the time that the railroad actually started running, more and more people began to move into the area. So much so that by 1854, when we had a population of about 300 people, they actually petitioned the Georgia General Assembly to create the town of Conyers, and they wanted to drop the Conyers station and become a town. And so on February the 16th, 1854, the town of Conyers was created by an act of the Georgia General Assembly.
The first train depot was the economic center and the heart of this unusually shaped new town. The legislative act declared that the town of Conyers would consist of all the land within a half-mile of the depot.
The city limits
The city limits, it was round, and there was no other place in the United States that had, and especially in the state of Georgia, that the town was, the city limits was rounded.
The railroad opened access to markets worldwide for the area's cotton farmers, and the trains brought in materials and goods that added a bit of luxury to the little town. As Atlanta grew, so did Conyers. The railroad opened access to markets worldwide for the area's cotton farmers, and the trains brought in materials and goods that added a bit of luxury to the little town. As Atlanta grew, so did Conyers. In the mid-1860s, Conyers attracted a new and unwelcome group of visitors.
I doubt that Sherman or Girard or anybody that came, through this way would have messed with Conyers, except they were trying to destroy the railroad and the depot, because that's where they could, route soldiers in, route supplies through. Conyers was close enough you could probably stop here and get them in by wagon if something happened to the railroad. So it was a transportation center, and that's why the Yankees came to see us. General Girard came in July 22nd of 1864. That was the Battle of Atlanta was raging in Atlanta, and Sherman did not want them to be reinforced through the railroads from Virginia through Augusta. So he sent General Kennedy Girard. It was called mounted infantry. It wasn't called the cavalry. It was mounted infantry. They burned 2 cotton warehouses and set the depot on fire. The warehouses and the depot were burned in July. And then when Sherman planned his march to the sea, they came back through on November 17th and totally destroyed the depot, finished burning the cotton, burned the warehouses, tore up the railroad tracks, and made a mess of the town. So you've got a 16-mile stretch with 45,000 men marching through, and the population of the county in 1860 was 2,000, so we were somewhat outnumbered.
As I was a young boy, my grandfather told me about, as a child, 9 or 10 years old, looking out the window of their home at the Union soldiers in their yard, and they had come to take whatever food they had and their livestock. But my grandfather's parents had taken their livestock down into the woods and tied them to where they couldn't find them.
The little kids, what they did is they, like the chickens and the ducks, they put like the tubs over them and they were like sitting on them, and as General Sherman was coming by, and the soldiers, they just like would sit there and they would do nothing to the kids, and they would just go on by, but that's the way they like saved their food, so the soldiers wouldn't get everything.
There's a large granite outcropping, big rock in the backyard. I mean, when I say large, you could put 3 or 4 cars on top of it. That's the size of it. And the story is, what I've been told is actually General Sherman had lunch on my rock as he was going to the sea, tearing up the railroad tracks and torching everything. So I suppose we read a newspaper that he gotten from Augusta that had got couriered in.
And the paper said that they didn't know where he had gone. He'd left Atlanta, and they weren't sure where he was going. And he was just delighted because he said that nobody knew yet, and he could still surprise the folks down the road and destroy as much property as he could.
With the war behind them, the men came home and rebuilt what had been destroyed. The farmers resumed planting and shipping bales of cotton, and a new depot was once again the center of Conyers. The town continued to grow, and in 1870, the Georgia General Assembly created Rockdale County from parts of Newton and Henry counties. Conyers city limits, still round, were extended to a 1-mile radius beyond the depot. At the close of the century, the railroad, the Yellow River, and local cotton attracted a new industry. Milstead Mills came to town. In 1904, Fuller E. Calloway Sr., who owned several cotton mills in LaGrange, Georgia, bought controlling interest in Milstead Mills. The mill was soon running full-time and made heavy cotton duck that was used for manufacturing. Milstead became a highly desirable place to work. Calloway built housing, recreational facilities, and provided a school. They even had a semi-pro baseball team, the Milstead Grays.
The Calloway Foundation was always good for the community. They provided a golf course you mentioned. They had a gymnasium, they had recreational activities and so forth.
Calloway paid his teachers $75 a month, and the state was paying their teachers $37.50 a month. But he was able to get the finest teachers.
Well, they bought cotton local. Mr. C.K. Gailey was the buyer for Callaway here in town. And they hauled the cotton out to the mill out there, and they called the folks that worked in the mill lint heads. I'll never forget that.
People, when they come out of the mill, would have this fine cotton in their hair, and it's hard to get out. You could use air, but it'd be white as mine. That's when they'd call you lint head. So there's nothing derogatory about being a lint head. I'm proud to be called a lint head.
To move raw materials in and finished goods out, Milstead built a 3-mile rail spur that has left longtime residents with vivid memories and new citizens with a piece of the past.
Oh, ride the dinky, yeah, we can jump on the dinky and grab onto it when they wasn't looking, or the engineer and the conductor and ride it.
I have no idea how they got the name of the dinky train. I guess because it's a very short train.
It would come from Milstead forward, go up hit the main track, and then back to Conyers. Then it going back to Milstead, go back up, and then on the main track, get on the spur, and back all the way back to Milstead. It was quite an engine.
With industry in place and the depot as the heart of the community and the door to the outside world, the citizens of Conyers settled into the rhythms of small-town America.
Now, downtown was all-inclusive, and we had everything to exist downtown. There was nothing that we didn't have.
We had a garage here where the fire truck stayed. It had a siren on top of it and had a volunteer department. So every time you had a fire, somebody would go throw a switch and get the siren going, and all the volunteer firemen would come down together to get the fire truck. It was an old T-model Ford with a body on it, had a bunch of holes on it. The problem was every time it'd come get it, the battery would be dead and it wouldn't start. Albert Bennett's job was to grab the wrecker of Ford Motor Company, run up here and back down there and hook onto the fire truck so he could pull the truck wherever the fire was. Of course, he knew it wasn't going to start. So he'd pull it over there, and then they'd get to where the fire was. We didn't have any pressure, any pumps, you know, in the fire truck. And they'd sit there and they'd hook the hose up, and he'd shoot a spray about as far as that door. That's about as far as it could go.
When school started every year, everybody would go down to Willie Allman's 5 and Dime store. And it was neat because you'd walk in, they'd have everything already packaged up for you. If you was first grade, second grade, or whatever, you just go in and pull off the shelf your bag of supplies that was needed for the upcoming school year.
Well, we used to go up to Atlanta, you know, as kids. Like I say, my parents and grandparents used to take us up there, and we'd go up and visit relatives and friends and, you know, go shopping. And when we go over to our relatives' house, they said, yep, that's the kids from Plum Nellie. Yeah, they live plumb in the sticks and Nellie bite out of the world. So, you know, that's just the way it was.
My dad in the early 1930s ran a grocery store here in Conyers. The ladies would call in the orders, and Dad would take the orders, and he would deliver. As I said, he had an A-model truck, and he would deliver the groceries every day to the ladies when they would call in their orders. And that's the way the ladies shopped for the groceries back then.
I would pick up my papers off the train, come around every afternoon at 4 o'clock. We'd throw them off, didn't stop, just threw them off. And we'd get them, and I had a pony, and I'd jump on that pony, and I could get those papers out in 30 minutes, because there wasn't that many of us here. I rode the pony. Well, the reason you rode the pony, we didn't have many paved streets. And you could ride right up to the front door because it wasn't paved. It was just dirt. And the pony wasn't hitting the dirt going up the walk. And I'd shoot up through there and throw that paper and get the next one, and it didn't take long.
And Conyers was always known to have the best Coca-Cola because of our water. Our water was real good. When my daddy first started working for the Coca-Cola plant, they had a machine which was like a pedal machine, like an old-fashioned sewing machine, and they would have to sit there and just pedal it back and forth like that to run the machinery to bottle the Coca-Colas. I could have Coca-Colas to drink when my mother and daddy couldn't afford milk to drink till we got a cow in the backyard.
And you could pretty much go anywhere, you know, it's like everybody was your mother and daddy. So, you know, you could just romp, go wherever you wanted to, and, you know, people would know who you were, you know, everybody knew everybody.
And then, of course, as a kid, we played down here a lot. There was, the Dinky Railroad was backing up to take cotton to Millstridge, you know, and kids would come down here, and it was, as I said, it was sort of like Mayberry, you know, everybody went everywhere and played everywhere. It was a lot of fun.
I think some of the fondest memories are being able to skate on the old metal wheel roller skates on the street without anybody telling us that we're going to be breaking any rules.
There was always somebody watching. And it wasn't like it was, you know, mean, gossipy things. It was people cared about each other. We were everybody's children. It was the village kind of thing that raised up my kids. The whole village raised my kids. And they turned out pretty good. And I do tell people exactly that. I had an awful lot of help.
On a rainy day in March of 1944, with war raging throughout the world, something new and unexpected arrived at the Conyers Depot. 21 monks, fasting from food and drink, arrived from Kentucky and took up residence in a barn on their new property in southern Rockdale County. As the newcomers went about the business of establishing the Monastery of the Holy Spirit, the local residents puzzled over this new development.
So every time the grand jury convened, they had a committee from the grand jury go investigate the monastery. And they did that for several years. You know, the citizens here, we didn't know what monks were.
They thought we were Germans for a while, but then they changed their mind and found out we were not from Germany, we were from the States.
As the monks began to build their house of worship, they also set about building ties with their community. The brothers of the order engaged in civic duties, such as voting and donating blood during blood drives. Monastery bread became a welcome addition to many area meals. In South Rockdale, if your home caught on fire, the Monastery Fire Department was your saving grace.
Whenever there was a fire in the area, we were called. There was no fire department this far out of Conyers, and so any fire that was in the area, we were called. I just met somebody last night. I was at the South Rockdale Civic Association meeting, and someone came up and said, you know, you all, he was an older man like my age, he says, you all saved my farm.
As the monks farmed their property, treasures and tools from the past showed them that they were not the first to revere the land they had chosen.
Every Sunday I'd get on there and walk the garden, and before I knew it, I began to collect pot Sheridan points and so forth from the property, and many of them would go back to 10,000 years ago, right here in Rockdale County. So we just, you and me and all of us were just a drop in this eternal, there's something sacred about the land here in Rockdale County that these people who preceded us probably buried here, and they dropped these little relics that we pick up, and time hasn't destroyed them.
Within 16 years of their arrival, the Brothers of the Order had built by hand a magnificent abbey. Bricks were scarce and expensive when construction began, so the decision was made to build with poured concrete. The concrete, used at first out of necessity, allowed the monks to avoid the intricate detail work common in other Tudor Gothic churches. As a result, the abbey inspires reverence, but also reflects the simplicity of the monks' lives. Over the years, the Monastery of the Holy Spirit has developed an international reputation as a source for fine bonsai, and is the largest importer of Japanese pottery in the country. Monastery fruitcake is in high demand. The breathtaking stained glass produced in Conyers by Brothers of the Order has been installed in churches, cathedrals, and public buildings throughout the country. The retreat house at the monastery is open to groups and individuals of all faiths wishing to restore their spirit. Over the years, the monks have opened themselves to the community, and in turn, the people of Conyers and Rockdale County have welcomed these men of faith.
Many people who would have never gone to a Catholic church or approached a Catholic priest found themselves coming here and saying, well, gee, these people aren't too bad, you know, they seem like regular, normal people, and I think that had a huge effect on the community.
The people are more outgoing and more communicative with people in Conyers. They love each other. That's the reason why I think the Conyers would be the ideal place for us to be. And we love people too, so they come to us and we appreciate them. That's one of the reasons I would say why Conyers happen to jibe in or dovetail with our lifestyle.
About the time Conyers was getting used to the monks and celebrating the town's 100th birthday, local merchants came up with a novel way to stimulate commerce on Saturday afternoons.
I don't remember exactly when they started, sometime in the 50s. And the merchants gave a coupon. You got one ticket for every 25 cents purchased. And it would really draw the crowds. All along the depot, from the depot down to Forest-Dale Lumber Company would be buggies, wagons for people who come to town. And at that time, a lot of folks come to town once a month or twice a month.
Everybody looked forward to it because it was quite a good bit of money. $125, $50 prizes that were given out that was furnished by the merchant. And that was quite a draw for people to come into town.
And people would hang around for hours. And they visit and they socialize and they chew tobacco and spit in the streets and that kind of stuff, you know.
But the show would let out and the children would come and find their parents, and then everybody would gather somewhere in Old Town. Now it was designated. They moved the drum, the drawing drum, around so that it was not located at one merchant's store every week.
Bad weather had them in the picture show. They'd move inside. They had a big old drum, they'd turn the booger and then they'd pick out the numbers and call them, and it was a great day on Saturday. You couldn't walk for the people in town Saturday.
I do the PA system for Mr. Hicks while we'd spin that barrel and draw that ticket. It's quite an occasion because really at that time, see, you know, we had I don't know, maybe 10 or 12,000 people in this community, but on Saturday, a lot of folks would come to town.
I remember once I was a little kid, I was shaking pecans on a pecan tree, and I heard my name from downtown, and you had to be there to win, and I can remember my name being called, but I couldn't get out of the tree and get downtown in time. That's one of the great disappointments in my life.
In the 1960s, the face of Conyers was to change forever. Milstead Mills closed due to worldwide shifts in the textile markets. AT&T and Lithonia Lighting brought new jobs to town, and the whole region was forced to make long overdue social changes.
And naturally, at my age, I grew up in a segregated society here in Conyers. Even though I never really saw the hate that some people see in other areas of the state and of the country. People here have always been able to communicate, even though at that time that was way of life.
During that unfortunate time when we had two separate school systems, one for the white race, one for the black, the community pulled together with the two factions understanding what needed to be done to change that, to make a unitary school system. And that was done by the two groups simply working together and avoiding court-ordered busing or mandated integration of a particular type. The community did it.
In 1965, the Rockdale County school systems were integrated. And I think it's quite a compliment and to the community and to the citizens of Rockdale County the way this took place.
At that time, they was constructing Rockdale County High School, and they had the first class to go in the fall of '65, '66. So I was in that class, and so that was the first year that we desegregated in Rockdale County, and the decision was made that there was always a good relationship, I thought, between the people of color here in Rockdale County, that, you know, because everybody pretty much knew everybody, you grew up with everybody. So we went to school, and, you know, we had some problems as always, little kids doing different things, but overall everything was real smooth, and I ended up, Veronica Luster and myself, we graduated May 30th, 1966.
Here we were, the smallest county in the state of Georgia, integrated the school systems without any problem. I'm real proud of that. It should have taken place years before.
A major transportation shift brought opportunity and change to Conyers.
It was great for Rockdale County. It really set us on fire as far as growth goes and getting things done.
The interstate system really made Rockdale County the bedroom for Atlanta. Industry started coming. We opened it was a shopping center opened on West Avenue.
The railroad was not being used as it once had. It was not being the transportation mode for the state. The interstate opening up in the mid-60s had opened up transportation, and it turned out it was much cheaper to actually ship things by flatbed truck.
The heart of the city started to pull away from the railroad and the depot. By the end of the decade, the city's growth patterns were quickly changing, and decisions were being made in an attempt to keep up.
What happened was that Conyers had shifted its commerce and retail over closer towards the interstate. So the depot was closed in June 30th of 1972.
The city had an opportunity to tear down the depot and make a parking space there, and the Historical Society was very much opposed to that. And the city council intended to go ahead and do it anyway, so there was a lot of feeling that it was pretty strong.
For 130 years, the depot had anchored the community. But when the railroad no longer had need for the building, the citizens of Conyers weren't ready to lose their oldest friend.
All my life, this depot, as it has been throughout its existence of 150 years of operation here, has been the center of this community's life for everyone. At the time, instead of preserving, people thought it was easier to raise it and then build something new. But they weren't realizing that when they raised it, they were losing the past. And the Historical Society was laughingly called around town the Hysterical Society. And for 2 years, from 1973 until 1975, we went to many a city council meeting trying to convince the then mayor and council that this building was worthy of saving.
The depot and the old jail were historical buildings, and we wanted to preserve them. So we organized the Historical Society and were able to maintain those.
The community was in very bad need of a place to hold meetings and groups, clubs to organize, and we also needed a place. We had a little theater group that wanted to utilize the warehouse. So we had people that, began to see a vision, and we all began to work together.
As we opened the Depot Players and I became involved with the theater, of course we dealt with the train, and at first it was going to be an inconvenience because the train was going to come through during the performance, but that became a charm of the organization. The players on stage simply froze. And the train went by and the audience members would stand up literally and look out the doors and watch the train. Then they'd come back to their seats and the play would continue.
A sleepy little rural town had become a progressive suburb of metro Atlanta. The restored depot had restored the heart of Conyers and Old Town.
This is still a very small community, and you notice that by going to the football games on Friday night or Saturday night and seeing the people who are there supporting the kids, by going to the soccer games, by going to any of those athletic events. But it's not just the athletic events that have that high spectator participation and support. We've got a very strong fine arts program with the drama clubs and musical presentations, a very broad range of fine arts in the school system. And the community supports those very strongly as well. And that's what will make our kids successful.
One of the things that has been really wonderful about working in kind of the small town atmosphere of Conyers is the commitment of the volunteers and of the people. It's truly community arts based. People who come on our board or who volunteer with us are doing it because they love the arts, they love the community, they love living in Conyers, and they want to see the arts for our community.
The arts keep people in a community. The arts say that a community is broad enough to realize that that is a vital part of what we do. This community has done that.
We've been able to still keep the small town, flavor, which I think is critical to all communities that surround, metropolitan areas. It's very easy to lose that, and we've been able to keep that.
I've always kind of heard Conyers described as kind of Mayberry come to Atlanta.
But I've said this many times, and it's still true today, in 2003. We do not experience the level of crime that most of our neighbors have, and certainly not our neighbors to the larger counties and larger cities.
I think our parents like it here because there's a lot of people here that can show them around and stuff. And there's a lot of people here who can play with you and have fun with you. And there's no strangers here. It seems like we know everybody.
Throughout the years and with revitalization, Old Town has retained its charm and character, and today is a popular gathering place for residents and visitors alike.
I'd like for people to think, let's just go to Old Town. You don't have to have a particular place you want to go. You can go there, you can go have a drink at one place, go eat at another place, go have dessert at another place. You can go listen to music at, any number of places. So it'd be nice to think of it, let's just go to Old Town and just end up where we end up at. And that's kind of I think one of the goals of Old Town is to give people enough choices to where you can just come and do what you want to do.
The first Saturday of every December, we have the holiday hometown parade, and so many people come home for this. They're home, they're seeing their family, they get to do the candlelight shopping down Old Town. They've really restored Old Town beautifully, and it's just nice to come back and go, wow, this is kind of like what it was like when we were little, walking through the streets and being able to still do that and not worry.
I often think about my children enjoy truly a small town right outside of a major metropolitan Atlanta. My son, when he was 10 years old, would get on his bicycle and drive to Old Town and go up to the pharmacy and enjoy a beverage there at the counter, and only probably his grandfather could appreciate doing that himself many years back. So Conyers has many of those little small things that makes it very, very special.
We love living here. It's just less than a mile from the gallery, and it's just so neat to be a part of Old Town Conyers. We just love it here. It just seemed to fit.
For a small town, Conyers has turned out more than its share of homegrown celebrities. Colleen Moore left home to become a silent screen star in the 1920s. Her style was so unique that F. Scott Fitzgerald described her as the very definition of a flapper girl. During the same era, Miss Sally Fanny Cleaton went to Washington and became a leader in the national suffragette movement. She also made her mark as Georgia's first female aviator. Country music legend Brenda Lee was born in Rockdale County. Academy Award winner Holly Hunter first acted on the stages of Conyers and graduated from Rockdale High. Dakota Fanning, the youngest actor ever to be nominated for a Screen Actors Guild Award, has only recently left town for Hollywood. E.R. Shipp, winner of the 1996 Pulitzer Prize for Commentary, was educated in Conyers Public Schools. Local athletic fields produced Clint Mathis, feared striker for the 2001 U.S. Men's World Cup soccer team. And Curtis Akins worked after school at the Conyers A&P before heading out to share his love of good food as host of Pick of the Day and other shows on the Food Network and ABC. Internationally known soprano Teresa Ham-Smith and jazz trumpeter Marcus Printup also are from Conyers.
Supposedly years ago, a visitor from Atlanta coming through and asking an old gentleman sitting out front on the bench, what's your community famous for? Is there anything special about this place? And the man thought a moment and said, well, no, not really, except this is where the world begins. And the visitor was kind of stunned and said, what do you mean? Well, you can start here and go anywhere in the world.
In 1996, the world came to Atlanta, and it just required a little vision for Conyers to join in.
Well, I can't think of anything that would be more unlikely than the Olympics, other than me being mayor, first of all, than the Olympics happening, the equestrian events here.
And we were listening to the radio as numbers of people were, some who were at home watching TV, because the announcement was to come from the International Olympic Committee as to which city would be chosen to host the 1996 Centennial Olympic Games. And as we were driving into Atlanta, we looked up and we heard on the radio the announcement from Juan Antonio Samaranch, who was the president of the International Olympic Committee, that Atlanta had been chosen. And saw the fireworks go off in underground Atlanta and all the celebration. And at that moment, it occurred to me that this is real. We will be the venue for the Olympics. And there ought to be a way for Conyers to be involved in Rockdale County.
Everyone was excited about it. The Chamber of Commerce, Rockdale County helped tremendously. All the children and civic organizations, everybody got behind this effort and made it happen. So it wouldn't have happened without that. That show of public support convinced ACOG that this community could deal with it.
So it came from a great competition. We came out of really nowhere to win the competition. I think we won over 13 other places or communities that wanted the equestrian events. And then it became the task of getting about doing all the work that we had to do to host the games.
This was a town of, at the time, probably 8,000 people in a workforce of less than a couple hundred. And these 200 employees banded together and against insurmountable odds won this bid to host the Olympics and built this park. And when I say built it, engineered it and financed it and designed the water lines and the landscaping and the road systems and managed the construction and got it all done on time to host literally the world's largest sporting event. And one of the immeasurable benefits it gave to this community is a city workforce that is absolutely not afraid of anything. And this team can go out there and get any job done because they have done the biggest job of all.
It was a great experience. I enjoyed just being a part of it. I love, flipping on the TV and seeing Conyers on TV and going, yes, the whole world is watching our little town and watching it for a good reason, man.
And knowing the whole world is watching, and you're this little spot in this world, and all the attention is on this one little community. It was great. I think that was the most unifying thing that has ever happened in Conyers.
Succeeded in terms of having great games here. The venue was spectacular by all accounts. The city came out of it extremely well financially, as well as in terms of identity, in image, which was all very positive. And we were left with a great facility, which those who are now at the city have maintained well. And they've booked the facility, and it's doing extremely well. And I dare say it's one of the only venues as a result of the Olympic Games that is still used for its intended purpose.
Post-Olympics has been great. We've got a great facility out there with the horse park. It's a great tourist attraction with the events that we bring in out there. So it's been a pleasant surprise, and it not turning out to be some white elephant, but it's been a real revenue tax-based booster for our county and city.
The Georgia International Horse Park is certainly one of the biggest assets that the city has. As we look forward, I think that we have been able to attract some of the biggest and best equestrian events in the country, and possibly in the world as well.
What the horse park does is provide a foundation for tourism that generates sales tax dollars that the school system uses to build schools, and that the Rockdale County government uses to build roads and jails and water treatment plants. And those are all services that are used by the members of our community, but are paid in large part by the visitors to our community.
The Nature Center is part of the Georgia International Horse Park. We've got about 150 acres designated for the Nature Center. It's got probably about a 30-acre wetland area, which I just call a swamp, because that's pretty much what it is. Got granite outcroppings, some old-growth forest, a lot of steep slopes. It's just about got everything in that the state of Georgia has as a terrain other than the, quote, the coast.
Conyers has always been a city of vision and a city with heart.
I swell with pride that we had people that grasped the vision and took it to the point. And I just see that Conyers has, with the newcomers that come in, I've been fortunate enough to see many of the newcomers at the Welcome Center, and they too want a sense of place. They want the same type of quality of life for their families, and we have preserved it here. So many communities lost it, and they're trying to find it again.
A few years ago, I was fortunate enough to win a state championship in basketball, and found out later that I had an ineligible player, so I gave the state championship back, and I was feeling really bad, and the community really rallied behind me, and they bought another trophy and all of this stuff, It made me feel good to live in a place like this.
I've noticed a change in younger people coming back into the city and redoing homes and things like that. And with that, I see young folks coming in, therefore starting families, to where the vision would be about like what I had when I was growing up, with putting their time and efforts into homes and businesses here in the city, and to where their children grow up and can take advantage of small town atmosphere just like I had growing up.
There's a good history, and there are good folks and good people who are moving in, and I think that there's been a wonderful blending of those people as they've tried to work together.
I was born and raised here. There's not a lot of us left, the natives. We're being outnumbered, but it's because everybody knows, has heard, the secret's out.
I think it is important for the newcomers to this community to be a part, to understand the history, because they are now a part of the future. And to be successful in the future, you need to know and understand your past.
We found the house that we're in now. I was like, okay, I don't care how far it is. I love it. The kids have room to play. And I think within the first week, we actually had 2 neighbors. Well, 3 neighbors came and introduced themselves to us, and a couple of people brought cupcakes or cookies or something. The family came. It was just really sweet. You don't get that a lot anymore.
This is a good place to be. It really is. I happen to end up here, as I said. But if I could, knowing what I know now, if I could choose where I'd want to be here or a place just like this.
Conyers is going to be in the community of Conyers. Even though it has grown so much, even the past 20 years.
I think that's the key is we don't just keep building up and replacing. We build around what is already us, and appreciate who we've been.
I frankly think the future of Conyers is great. We're still right on the back doorsteps of Atlanta, and we've We've got some good leadership. As long as we keep good leadership, we'll make it.
The past builds a foundation for the present. And then for the present, it's up to that leadership at that point in time to develop the vision for the future. So you have to have that past to get to today. And we've had just phenomenal leadership.
The prosperity that we've all enjoyed, it brings these challenges that we experience today. And I only see that to get more so. But if we can, and we have a lot of good leadership in this community, if we stay ahead of that curve, I think we can meet those challenges. And I still think that Conyers, Georgia will remain with that family atmosphere.
We now have something with pride and something to build and something that we can hand to the next generation. We have preserved and strengthened our proud heritage.
You have to have a passion, and you want to be a part of that. And when you look at all the leaders that have served the Conyers from the elected side, or as well as just the people that give of their time, they have a passion and love for their community. And it's, I think it speaks for itself that they are the ones that got us to the present. And now, it's like I said earlier, you know, the torch is in our hand, and hopefully we're going to pave the way for the future.
I think that if we can continue to encourage people to be a part of their community, whether it's citizens, elected officials, or employees, that we can ensure the success of the next 150 years. But I think it's up to us.